Yeah, so moving on, we're going to talk about anime and what makes an anime. Because there are some cartoons that I consider cartoons that some people would say are anime, but I disagree. Examples are like, Avatar, the original Teen Titans cartoon, and Boondocks, which people call anime, but I don't think they are, and I'm going to explain why.
I don't. I
And
can understand
no,
Avatar and Boondocks.
100%.
I will never understand the original Teen Titans. That doesn't even. That's not even in the same style as anime. What?
It's similar. It's not. It's not exactly though.
I heavily disagree with that.
Yeah, I think the
I'll
creator mentioned
respect
that their style was somewhat similar.
I respect that. I don't agree. I respect it though, but that's yeah. Wow.
So I would say that there are several things I think that make something an anime versus a cartoon. Being realistic, anime is just sort of animation, and they are literally just straight up Japanese cartoons. That's what anime is. But what makes up an anime specifically to me is, number one, it's made by Japanese people mostly. Like the creative team is mostly Japanese. Secondly, is Japanese people have a very specific way of telling stories that I feel like is unique to them because of their culture that isn't easily mimicked by other cultures. And a lot of that has to do with a few things that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But before I get to that, I wanted to say that because anime is so popular, the distinction between anime and cartoons is slowly getting harder and harder to tell because more anime are starting to take elements from Western cartoons, and more Western cartoons are starting to take elements from anime, kind of creating this, mesh of the best of both worlds. And because of that, what's the difference between the two is starting to become harder and harder to see. But there still is a difference. And the differences I'm about to bring up, after doing the research, none of these are exclusive to Japan. And it is hard to really pinpoint what really makes an anime because the biggest thing that does it is simply the Japanese culture. That's the biggest part that makes it what it is. So I'm literally going to start there. So I learned some things during this research, which is literally the point of research, is why Japanese is so what a lot of people consider weird. The reason for that is because to avoid I don't know how to say this word.
Colonialism?
Colonialization. I can't speak. How do you say that word? Say it again.
Colonialization.
Colonialization. There we go. To avoid colonialization and basically become more modern, because Japan has always been a closed-off society until only 100 years ago. They were very closed off, and they were never invaded by Europeans like most countries over here in the Americas were. All of our every country over here in North and South America was invaded by Europe, but Japan never was. So they retained a lot of their culture. So when they finally did open up and start, mingling with other countries, they kind of just started pulling in a bunch of different stuff from all of those different countries to kind of make their society more modern. And this started happening in the late 1800s. And then it went to a second phase after World War II, where they were basically just seeking out new culture and ideas and incorporating them into their culture. Because it happened not too long ago and it happened very quickly, Japanese people basically became a bit more open-minded when it comes to diversifying their culture. And it created this hybrid culture that to people outside of Japan see as super weird. And basically my research, this is what I found out. I feel like the best way to explain it is, think of it like our generation versus older generations. Some of the things we do is considered odd because it's new and different. And also, we also tend to take old things and reinvent it to fit our generation. That's kind of what Japan did. They're kind of they're like little kids. Not little kids, but kids our age. They're people our age versus people 10, 15 years older than us. they just are inventing new things, like bringing new things into society, while also taking old things and making them a bit different. And that's why they seem so weird compared to us. So
I guess that makes a lot more sense when I consider, well, this isn't anime related, but it's more manga related. But I just noticed with Akira Toriyama's mangas, not just considering Dragon Ball, it's like
I'm sorry.
Just oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I literally was just saying sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Right. I was saying, I like so with other mangas and Akira Toriyama's list of projects he's done, and I wouldn't mention Dragon Ball since it's Dragon Ball. Well, his other works have been a lot more bizarre and even similar that were before this. So you got characters that were, well, if it's okay to say this, they're pooping, and their poop is like pink, and it has a smiley face on it. And I always question, what the heck is that? And like, it never dawned on me like, this is the kind of comedy that they're okay with over there, or at least they were used to. Yeah, I'm sure now they're like they're actually a little more strict now, but
yeah, nowadays
before it was like they hardly thought that the kids would even think about it as inappropriate.
Yeah, nowadays, they become less, weird, for lack of a better term, because one, most people are getting used to it. They're used to the kind of like uniqueness of Japan, and also Japan itself is becoming more falling in line with other countries and adopting, like I said, they are open to bringing in, new cultures into their society and adapting it. So as they do that, they become more and more in line with, other countries. They'll still always stay unique because of how quickly they decided to change in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, but they're becoming less and less, like I said, weird, for like a better term. But there are three other elements that after doing some research, I found out is unique to Japanese storytelling. When movies, books, anime, cartoons. Number one is something that was described in the many articles and videos I watched as savoring the moment. There are tons of lingering like shots and moments in movies and live action movies and animated movies and anime that happen in Japanese stories where they will just it doesn't necessarily focus on a specific plot point. They just hold on a shot just for the sake of showing the beauty of it. That happens a lot if you guys have watched any studio Ghibli movies. How do you pronounce it? Is it Ghibli or Ghibli? People always say.
I always say Ghibli.
Yeah, people. I say Ghibli. I don't know if anybody knows because everybody says it differently. But if you, I know for a fact you've seen some there. Have you seen? It'd be weird if you didn't. I'm sure you've seen some studio Ghibli.
Oh yeah, no. I've seen about. I feel like I've seen all of them, but there may be one I missed.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't know. I've actually recently started watching a lot of them because until recently I'd only seen Ponyo, and the only reason I'd seen Ponyo is because Miss Harris had played in her classroom like 1,000 times. That's the only reason I had ever seen Ponyo. Otherwise, I would have never seen a Studio Ghibli movie until sometime last year. I had watched Howl's Moving Castle. But yeah,
I love Howl's Moving Castle.
In those, if you've seen those movies, there's a lot of times where they will just slow down. And like we were talking with Berserk, just hold on a shot. And you'll just see a person just chilling, not doing anything that necessarily pertains to moving the plot forward. They're just doing it for the sake of showing you a beautiful shot and having you see something that pleases your eye rather than having you see something that, progresses the story. And that's something that happens a lot in Japanese media. The second one is having the difference between the protagonist and the antagonist be that they are, rather than it being good, evil, light versus dark, it's more of they just happen to take different paths. One may lead to a more morally either gray or, bad side, but it doesn't happen because one is just this innate evil. it more happens just because they happen to just take different paths. And like I said, this is another one that you definitely also see in Western media, but it definitely is something that kind of started in Japanese media. The last one is, the title I used is weird. It's kind of different from how I explain it, but the title is direct emotional engagement. But essentially, what I'm describing is the I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. I don't even know if I wrote it. Oh, Japanese stories, they use the circumstance that a character find themselves in as the main emotional generator, whereas in more Western stories, the main emotional generator is the character themselves. A good example of that, I feel like, is let's talk about Naruto. So Naruto, he's a cool character. He's a great character. We talk about Naruto a lot on this podcast. I
We
realize.
do talk about it. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It just shows off how good Naruto really is. Keep coming back to it.
So a big part of the conflict in Naruto, especially at the beginning, especially in that first arc, is the circumstances of his life. The fact that he has this demon inside of him, and because of that, everybody in his village ostracizes him, and no one likes him. Everybody hates him, and that's a big part of his story at the very beginning. And that's an example of the emotional generator being the circumstances that the characters put in, rather than the actual, obviously that leans into the character themselves giving emotion, but it stems from their situation, their circumstances. And that persists throughout the entirety of the anime, him being, a Judy. The Juby is the monster.
Ginger.
The jerky, there it is. The Juby is the monster. The jerky are the people with the Juby inside of them. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Do you guys have anything to say about, what constitutes as an anime versus a cartoon?
In my eyes, what constitutes as an anime is it made in Japan? Yes, it's an anime. Is it not made in Japan? No, it's not an anime.
That's fair.
Well,
like I said, that's
I'm not sure if I've seen other series do something like this. Because I'm aware of the 3-act structure. I've just seen it a lot more in manga than I have in other places. I've heard Kohakyu, where there's a conflict, a middle, and then resolution, or I think is what it is. Can't really remember most of how it went, but I do have a general feeling of how it goes. But I've seen how characters take a how's the way you would say it?
Is it backseat?
It's yes, and at the same time, no. I feel like there's small moments that if you focus hard enough, you could see what the character's really about. And this isn't a good assessment, but it is sort of an example. Like an example, people would say that in Dragon Ball, Krillin is the weakest character, but if you look through moments in, say, like the Planet Namek saga, he actually is like the smartest person on the planet in the moment. Like, he goes through strategy, he figures out a situation, he makes up for what he lacks in I guess, like, strength. He makes up with his brain. So sometimes I feel like, and I've gotten into conversations with people like this too, like they can't really agree that Krillin's really good, and maybe that he's underused in Super, which yes, he was. I mean, he was the first one to drop out. Well, I don't know. I just, every time I try to get into this argument, or I don't know, maybe argument or conversation with people, they usually just can't help but stay on the fact that he's just the weakest, and there's nothing he can really do to get himself out of that.
Every character is underused in Super, but like Krillin, I don't know. That's a weird argument for people to have, that Krillin isn't like a good character. Like, he's one of the best characters in the show, outside of like Vegeta or Piccolo or Gohan. Like,
Krillin, another one like that people would say Vegeta is the character with the most development, especially in Super, that's where I have to tell them that that's not really a good assessment, because especially in Super, Vegeta really didn't have a role in the series,
I feel like
because this was at a point where Akira Toriyama and Toyotaro, they really didn't know how to write for the character at that point. They kind of they ended it at the Buu saga, where he declares to Goku that he's the best, he's number one. But in Super, they retconned it a little, saying that he's still Goku's rival and he'll still try to top him. But the way they try to get Vegeta to progress to Goku's level is a bit off. Not in the sense with strength, but in the sense that his motives are something that seems out of character, especially for Vegeta.
I feel like the Buu saga was, even though, in my opinion, it's the weakest arc, it was a good end to the series, and it should have just stayed that way.
Yeah, I
On the
gotta
same level, I
agree with
really agree.
I think it should have ended, just stayed there. It was a good ending, you know? I also think Goku should have stayed dead, but that's an entirely different conversation.